All right, so today we've got a story for you that starts out like any other day in Austin, Texas, but it takes a wild turn. It's got compassion, some quick thinking, and, you guessed it, a massive internet debate. And it all kicks off with one little squirrel having a very, very bad day. So let me just ask you this right out of the gate. You see a tiny animal in big trouble. Do you jump in? It's a simple question, right? But it's at the heart of a split-second decision that ended up having some pretty big ripple effects. Okay, so let's set the scene. We're in a quiet neighborhood in North Austin. It's a beautiful day, and in a backyard, a dog is chasing a squirrel. You know the scene. We've all seen it 100 times. It's just part of the suburban landscape. But this time was different. This wasn't just a playful chase anymore. Things got serious. The dog actually caught the squirrel. And for a second, it really looked like this was going to be the end of the road for our furry friend. We're talking the squirrel was literally in the dog's mouth. And that's when our hero of the story, let's just call them the Squirrel Savior, springs into action. They didn't even think twice. They ran over, reached right into the dog's mouth, and gently pried the little guy free. And get this, it wasn't even their dog. That pure instinct to just help, it completely took over. Now, you gotta love their reason why. When asked about it, they were totally honest. Yeah, they didn't want a dead squirrel in the yard, but also, and I'm quoting here, the squirrel is cute and the dog was being an asshole. I mean, sometimes being a hero is just that straightforward. Of course, a story like this is way too good to just stay in the backyard. The rescuers shared what happened online, and it just blew up. But the reaction wasn't what you might expect. It wasn't just a bunch of high fives. The internet basically split right down the middle into two very passionate sides. So on one hand, you had team praise. They were leaving comments like, "Thank you for rescuing him," and "I think you did a great thing." Just pure support. But then you had teen precaution, and they were coming in hot with warnings like, "Stop picking up squirrels, people," and pointing out that handling wild rodents is generally a really bad idea. Our hero, the Squirrel Savior, took all of this feedback with a pretty great sense of humor. They replied with this comment. Now, it's funny, for sure, but this witty response actually tees up the whole other side of this story. It takes us from the emotional should you or shouldn't you and drops us right into the real-world health concerns that people brought up. So, what are the risks, really? And that brings us to the core of this whole debate. Is a squirrel just a cute, fluffy neighbor, or is it something a little more contagious? Let's actually look at the facts that got tossed around in that online discussion. Okay, so let's get into the risks. First, some good news. The CDC says rabies in squirrels is extremely rare, so you could probably breathe a little easier on that one. But the other concerns that people raised online, they're not wrong. Wild rodents can carry some nasty stuff, tularemia, leptospirosis, and, yep, even the bubonic plague. Now, before you start panicking about the plague, let's put this into perspective. According to the CDC, we're talking about just a few cases in the entire U.S. every year, and they're mostly out in the rural Southwest. The key takeaway here is that while it's definitely serious if you don't treat it, it's also really rare and very treatable with antibiotics. So it's a valid concern, but not exactly a squirrel apocalypse. So, knowing all this, how do you balance that gut instinct to help an animal with, not catching the plague? Well, this is where the online community actually came through with some fantastic level-headed advice. The advice that floated to the top was pretty simple and smart. 1, if you possibly can, wear gloves. Put a barrier between you and the animal. 2, try to avoid saliva, which I know is tricky when you're pulling a squirrel from a dog's mouth. 3, as soon as you're done, wash your hands really, really well. And 4, probably the best advice of all, call the experts. Local animal rescue groups know how to handle these things safely. When you step back, this whole story is about so much more than just one dramatic rescue in a backyard. It's a perfect example of this compassion conundrum. It's that constant push and pull between our very human desire to help and the wild, unpredictable nature of the animals that live all around us. Think about it. What started as one person's split-second act of kindness accidentally turned into a huge, teachable moment for everyone. That whole online debate, with the praise, the warnings, the jokes, it ended up being this amazing example of community wisdom in action. And if you want proof of that, just look at this one comment from someone over in Europe. They said they feed squirrels all the time where they live and had no idea about the different health risks here in the States. Because of this whole conversation, they learned something new that might actually keep them safe one day. That's a real, tangible impact. So it all brings us back to where we started, but with a much bigger picture. The story of the Squirrel Savior proves that kindness is this incredible, powerful force. But it also makes you wonder, right? In a world where we live side by side with wildlife, is that kindness enough? Or does it become truly powerful when you pair it with knowledge? It's definitely something to chew on the next time you see a creature in need.